They said the blind Alpha King could smell fear 3 kingdoms away, that he'd ruled in darkness for 15 years, his eyes milky white and sightless. Yet somehow he never missed a threat. They said he ate the tributes who displeased him. So when Alpha Victor smiled and chose Arya, the wolfless disgrace, the girl too broken to shift, too worthless to mourn, she knew she was walking toward her death. The other tributes were strong, beautiful she-wolves with glossy coats and sharp claws. Arya was nothing, invisible, the sacrifice no one would miss. The throne room was darker than she'd imagined. King Cyprian sat perfectly still, those dead white eyes staring at nothing. His face was carved from stone and shadow. Arya kept her head down, waiting for judgment, for dismissal, for the dungeon everyone whispered about. Then she heard him breathe, sharp, shocked, desperate. Color. The word cracked through the silence like lightning. The king rose from his throne, moving toward her with impossible precision, no hesitation, no searching. His blind eyes locked on her face as if he could see. "I can see you," he whispered, close enough now that she could see the scars around his eyes, old magic burns that never healed. "After 15 years of darkness, you're the only thing in this world I can see." His hand lifted toward her cheek, trembling, not with threat, but with wonder. And Arya realized her death sentence had just become something far more dangerous, destiny. Before we continue, what city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. And if you'd like to support me, please subscribe and like this video. It's free and it helps more people hear these stories. Arya's knees had gone numb an hour ago, but she didn't stop scrubbing. The packhouse floors were stone, ancient, and unforgiving, worn smooth by generations of wolves who'd walked here with pride. Arya knew every crack, every groove, she'd scrubbed them all 1,000 times. 23 years in the Whispering Woods pack, and this was what she knew best: how to make herself small, how to work until her hands bled, and how to be so quiet that sometimes she wondered if she was real at all. The hunting party returned just as she reached the entrance hall, their celebration loud and triumphant. Arya pressed herself against the wall, bucket and brush clutched tight, waiting for them to pass. They didn't. Beatrix came first, still in her wolf form, a gorgeous silver beast with ice-blue eyes that tracked Arya with casual cruelty. The Luna shifted mid-stride, her transformation fluid and effortless, everything Arya had never been able to do. Behind her, a dozen pack warriors did the same, their wolves melting away like they were shedding cloaks. Arya had never shifted, not once, not even a flicker of transformation. "Still scrubbing, little mouse?" Beatrix's voice was honey over poison. She crossed the entrance hall in 3 elegant strides, her bare feet tracking mud across Arya's freshly cleaned floor. The others followed, laughing, deliberately stepping where Arya had just scrubbed. Arya said nothing, she'd learned years ago that words only made it worse. Beatrix paused beside her, and Arya knew what was coming, she always knew. The Luna's foot caught the water bucket, too precise to be an accident and too casual to be challenged, sending it spilling across the stone in a dirty flood. "Oh, sorry," Beatrix's smile was beautiful and sharp. "I forgot you were down there. You're so easy to miss." The pack warriors laughed. Arya stared at the spreading water, her hour of work dissolving into muddy streaks, and felt nothing, not anger, not even humiliation, just that familiar dull ache of existing in a world that had decided she didn't matter. She waited until they'd gone upstairs to Alpha Victor's chambers before she started cleaning again. The sun had set by the time she finished. Arya's back screamed as she carried the bucket to the washroom, her hands raw and cracked. She was so tired she could barely think, which was good, thinking hurt worse than working. "Arya." The whisper came from the shadows near the kitchens. Leo emerged clutching a cloth bundle, his 12-year-old face split in a gap-toothed grin. Her little brother was all wild, dark hair and skinny limbs, but he'd already started showing signs of his wolf. Sometimes his eyes flashed gold, sometimes his hands sprouted claws he couldn't quite control yet. He would be strong someday, nothing like her. I saved you bread, he said, pressing the bundle into her hands, and some of the venison from the hunt. The cook wasn't looking. Arya's throat tightened. Leo, if they catch you. They won't. He grabbed her hand, tugging her toward the back gardens where they could hide. Come on, I want to try something. 10 minutes later, Arya was standing in the moonlight while her baby brother circled her with intense concentration. Maybe you're thinking too much like a human, Leo announced like he'd discovered something profound. Try thinking about chasing rabbits. Arya blinked at him. Chasing rabbits? Yes. Running through the forest, hunting. He made a pouncing motion. Feel the wolf inside. Leo. I don't want to chase rabbits. He deflated slightly. That's probably why it's not working. Despite everything, the exhaustion, the humiliation, the ache in her bones, Arya laughed. It came out rusty, like she'd forgotten how, but it was real. Leo beamed. One day, he said fiercely, squeezing her hand, one day you'll shift and everyone will see. You're not broken, Arya. I know you're not. She pulled him into a hug so he wouldn't see her eyes water. Let him believe. Let someone believe she could be more than this. In 3 days, the king's decree would arrive. In 3 days, her whole world would change. But tonight, she had bread and venison and a little brother who loved her. Tonight, that was enough. The royal messenger arrived at dawn, his horse foam-flecked and exhausted. By noon, the entire pack had gathered in the central clearing, whispers spreading like wildfire through the crowd. The blind Alpha King. After 15 years of silence, he was calling in deaths. Arya stood at the back, hidden behind broader shoulders, and listened to the rumors crawl through the assembly like living things. They say his eyes are completely white, dead, like milk. I heard he can still kill a man at 50 paces. Smell the lie in your blood. My cousin's mate said he keeps the tributes in cages, uses them for dark magic rituals. 1 tribute from every pack in the realm. He's collecting them like prizes. Alpha Victor stood on the raised platform, the royal decree clutched in his thick hands, his face unreadable. Beside him, Beatrix looked like she'd bitten into something rotten. No one wanted to go to the blind king's court, no one wanted to be the sacrifice. The decree is clear, Victor announced, his voice carrying over the restless crowd. King Cyprian of Lumina demands 1 tribute from each pack, a companion to aid in breaking an ancient curse. He paused, letting the weight settle. Whispering Woods will answer this call with honor. Honor. The word tasted like ash. Arya watched the selection ceremony unfold like a nightmare in slow motion. The eligible she-wolves were called forward, unmated, between 18 and 30, capable of representing the pack. They stood in a nervous line, trying not to look terrified. Some were daughters of wealthy families, others were warriors. All of them were whole. All of them could shift. Victor walked the line slowly, considering each face. The crowd held its breath. Then his eyes found Arya at the back, and he smiled. Whispering Woods offers our most dedicated member. His voice dripped with false sincerity. Arya, step forward. The crowd parted around her like she carried a plague. Arya's legs moved on instinct, numb and disconnected from her brain. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. But Victor's smile was very real as she reached the platform. Our hardest worker, our most loyal servant. Who better to represent Whispering Woods? Relief rippled through the assembly. Not their daughters, not their sisters, just the wolfless girl, just Arya. No. Leo's scream cut through the murmurs. He shoved through the crowd, his small face twisted with fury and terror. No. Take me instead. She's all I have. Two warriors caught him before he reached the platform. He fought them, claws sprouting from his 12-year-old hands, his eyes flashing gold. Please. Please, she didn't do anything wrong. Please don't take her. Arya's heart shattered. She looked at her baby brother, the only person in this pack who'd ever loved her, and felt something crack inside her chest that would never heal. Leo, she whispered, it's okay. It wasn't okay. It would never be okay. But what else could she say? Victor dismissed Leo with a wave. Take the boy home. The selection is final. As the warriors dragged Leo away, still screaming, Arya stood perfectly still. She'd known for years that her life would end badly, she'd just thought it would happen here, quiet and unnoticed, scrubbing floors until her body gave out. This was faster, cleaner in a way. At least Leo would remember her. At least someone would know she'd existed. Later, in the Alpha's chambers, Beta Gage asked the practical questions. Should we give her travel supplies? Proper clothing? Victor snorted. Why? She won't need them long. Beatrix wrinkled her nose. At least give her a bath. We don't want the king thinking we send dirty tributes. He's blind, Victor said flatly. He won't know the difference. They laughed. Arya, standing in the hallway just outside, heard every word. She pressed her palm against the cold stone wall and felt nothing, no anger, no fear, just that familiar emptiness. She had 3 days before the escort arrived. 3 days to say goodbye to the only life she'd ever known. 3 days before she walked into darkness and never came back. The journey to Lumina Citadel took 3 days. Arya spent them invisible. The royal escort collected tributes from 6 packs, and by the second day, the wagon held 12 she-wolves who wouldn't look at her. They were everything Arya wasn't: tall, confident, beautiful. Their wolves prowled just beneath their skin, making their eyes flash gold and their movements liquid grace. They spoke about court politics and mating bonds, and which of them the king might favor, as if this were a competition instead of a death sentence. Arya sat in the corner, knees pulled to her chest, and watched the mountain roads wind higher. None of them asked her name. Lumina Citadel appeared on the 3rd evening, rising from the cliffs like something carved from dreams and nightmares. Massive stone towers pierced the twilight sky. Silver banners snapped in the wind. The walls were so high Arya couldn't see their tops. This was where she would die. The throne room was darker than she'd imagined. Torches burned low in their sconces, casting more shadow than light. The other tributes were led in first, announced by name and pack, each one curtsying before the dais where the king sat perfectly still. King Cyprian of Lumina, the blind Alpha. He looked carved from granite and shadow, broad shoulders draped in black and silver, dark hair falling past his jaw, a face too severe to be called handsome. But it was his eyes that made Arya's breath catch, milky white, completely sightless, staring at nothing. Arya of Whispering Woods, the herald announced. She stepped forward, head bowed, waiting for dismissal, for judgment. The king inhaled sharply. Then he stood so fast his throne rocked backward. Color. The word cracked through the silence like breaking glass. Arya's head snapped up. King Cyprian was moving toward her with impossible precision, no hesitation, no searching. His blind eyes locked on her face like he could see. What are you? He whispered, circling her slowly. The court had gone completely silent. His white eyes tracked her every movement, every breath. What are you? A woman in silver armor stepped forward from the shadows. Brother, what's happening? I can see her, Seer. Cyprian's voice cracked on the words. He stopped in front of Arya, close enough that she could see the scars around his eyes, old burns that had healed badly, leaving the skin twisted and pale. Her face, her hair, it's brown, dark brown, like mahogany. His hand lifted toward her, trembling. I can see her eyes there. He stopped, swallowed hard. When he spoke again, his voice was raw with something that might have been grief or joy, or both. I'd forgotten what brown looked like. Arya couldn't breathe. This wasn't possible. She was nobody, nothing. How could she? This is dark magic. A man in commander's armor drew his sword, the blade ringing in the stunned silence. She's cursed him further. Put the sword down, Garrett. Cyprian didn't look away from Arya, couldn't, apparently. But sire. I'm looking at color for the first time in 15 years. Now Cyprian did glance at his commander, and even with those dead white eyes, his expression was fierce. If you ruin this, I will throw you in the dungeons myself. Garrett lowered his sword slowly. Cyprian turned back to Arya. His hand was still raised, hovering near her cheek but not touching. I've been blind for 15 years. Cursed. I learned to rule in darkness, learned to live without sight. His voice dropped to something almost reverent. And now you're here. And when I look at you, I can see. I don't understand, Arya whispered. Her voice sounded small and broken in the vast throne room. I'm nobody. I'm wolfless. You're the only thing in this world I can see. The weight of his stare, truly seeing her, drinking in every detail, made her feel exposed in a way she'd never experienced. All her life, she'd been invisible. Now the most powerful alpha in the realm was looking at her like she hung the moon. Princess Seer approached carefully. Can you see anything else? Cyprian glanced toward his sister's voice. His face fell. No. Just darkness. But when I look at her. He focused on Arya again, and something like wonder crossed his severe features. Everything. I can see everything about her. Arya's legs shook. This was impossible. This was insane. She'd come here to die quietly, another forgotten sacrifice to a cursed king. She hadn't come here to be seen, she didn't know how to be seen. Take her to the guest chambers, Cyprian commanded, though his eyes never left Arya's face. The ones near mine. He stopped, then started again. I need to understand this. As guards led her away, Arya looked back once. The king stood in his throne room, surrounded by luxury and power, staring after her with blind white eyes that somehow saw her better than anyone ever had. And Arya realized her death sentence had just become something far more dangerous, something like destiny. They discovered the limits of the miracle within an hour. Arya had been shown to chambers 3 doors down from the king's suite, a room larger than the entire space she'd shared with Leo back home. She'd barely touched the silk bedding when a knock came, urgent and sharp. Commander Garrett stood in the doorway, his expression grim. He needs you. What? He went blind again the moment you left the throne room. Arya's stomach dropped. She followed Garrett through corridors she'd never find again on her own until they reached a study where King Cyprian stood gripping the edge of a massive desk, his knuckles white. The moment she entered, he exhaled. There you are. His blind eyes found her instantly. And she watched relief flood his severe features. I thought when the darkness came back. I thought I'd imagined you. I'm real, Arya whispered. Yes. He straightened, something vulnerable flickering across his face. You are. And when you're gone, so was everything else. So Arya stayed. The days that followed developed a strange rhythm. She took meals in Cyprian's study, walked the citadel gardens at his side, and sat in the corner of council meetings while he ruled his kingdom with those white eyes that saw only her. The court whispered. The other tributes were sent home with golden apologies, and Arya learned what it meant to matter. Tell me about the curse, she said one evening. They were in his private library, surrounded by books he couldn't read anymore. Please. Cyprian was quiet for a long moment, his fingers tracing the spine of a volume he'd probably memorized. 15 years ago, I refused a political marriage. The woman's father wanted to merge our territories. She wanted a crown. His jaw tightened. Isolde didn't take the rejection well. She hired a dark magic practitioner, someone powerful enough to curse an Alpha King. What did they do to you? Stole my sight. Robbed me of the ability to see my people, my kingdom, my own face in a mirror. He turned toward her, those dead white eyes finding hers with eerie precision. They expected me to fail, to crumble, to prove I was weak without my vision. But you didn't. No. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. 15 years of darkness, Arya. I learned to rule by scent and sound. I memorized every step of this citadel. I can tell when someone lies by their heartbeat, identify my advisors by the way they breathe. He paused. But I never thought I'd see again. Arya's chest ached. And now? Now you're here. He crossed the space between them slowly, like he was afraid she might disappear. And when you smile. His voice dropped, rough and wondering. When you smile, the whole room lights up. At least for me. She didn't know what to say. All her life, she'd been nothing, invisible, the girl people forgot was in the room. But Cyprian looked at her like she was the sun after an endless winter, and it was intoxicating and terrifying all at once. I don't understand why, she managed. Why me? I'm nobody. I can't even shift. You're everything I can see, he said simply, like it was the most obvious truth in the world. That makes you everything. The door burst open. So, the council wants to know if we should send the other tributes home or, oh. Princess Sia stopped mid-stride, taking in the scene, her brother and Arya standing close enough to breathe the same air, dinner growing cold on the table behind them, clearly lost in conversation. Am I interrupting? Sia asked, though her tone suggested she knew exactly what she was interrupting. Yes, Cyprian said without looking away from Arya. Good. Sia leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. Continue. I'll just stand here and chaperone because apparently my brother has forgotten every rule of propriety. I'm the king. I make the rules. And I'm your sister. I enforce them. But Sia was smiling, something soft in her expression. The council can wait. But Cyprian, whatever this is, she gestured between them, figure it out quickly. Because the whole citadel is talking and half of them think she's blessed by the moon goddess while the other half thinks she's a witch. After Sia left, Cyprian sighed. She's not wrong. We need to understand this. Why you? Why now? Arya looked at the king who could see only her and felt something shift in her chest. For the first time in her life, she didn't want to be invisible. She wanted to be seen, especially by him. The ancient texts arrived from the royal archives 3 days later, carried by scholars who looked like they hadn't slept. Arya sat in the corner of Cyprian's study while they spread yellowed parchments across every surface, their fingers tracing words written centuries ago. Here, the head scholar breathed. The original curse documentation. Cyprian couldn't read it, so the scholar read aloud. Only one who sees without eyes and loves without sight may break the binding. The room fell silent. A riddle, Sia said finally. Of course, it's a riddle. The court seers arrived by evening, 3 ancient women who smelled of sage and moonlight. They circled Arya slowly, their eyes cataloguing every detail. She has no wolf, the eldest said. No predatory instincts clouding her vision. She sees with her soul, another added. Not with the hunger that drives our kind. The third seer touched Arya's face gently. She sees without eyes, without the eyes of a wolf. And perhaps, child, you might love without sight, without seeing what others see, power, status, strength. You see deeper. Arya's heart hammered. I don't understand. You don't need to. Not yet, the seer smiled. But you're the key. We are certain of it. After they left, Cyprian stood at the window, his blind eyes seeing nothing but darkness beyond Arya's form. Does it frighten you? Being the key to breaking this? Everything about this frightens me, Arya admitted. He turned, and his expression was soft. Would you walk with me? There's something I want to share. The Lumina Gardens were breathtaking under the full moon. Silver roses climbed trellises that reached toward the stars. Moonflowers bloomed white and luminous, their petals like captured starlight. Water trickled through carved fountains, and the air smelled of jasmine and something sweeter Arya couldn't name. I used to come here before the curse, Cyprian said, walking the paths like he'd memorized every stone. It was my mother's favorite place. She died when Sia was born, but I used to feel close to her here. It's beautiful, Arya whispered. I can't see the flowers anymore when you're not near. He stopped beside a fountain, his fingers trailing over carved stone. But I can smell them. Tell me what they look like. So Arya described them, the moonflowers with their trumpet-shaped blooms, the silver roses that seemed to glow from within, the delicate star jasmine weaving through it all like lace. She described the way moonlight caught on water droplets, the shadows the flowers cast, and the way everything seemed alive and magical. Cyprian listened like she was reciting poetry. You see beauty where others see weeds, he said quietly. That's your gift, Arya. You don't need a wolf to be extraordinary. Her breath caught. No one had ever called her extraordinary. No one had ever suggested she was anything but broken. What if I'm just useful? The words tumbled out before she could stop them. What if you only see me because of the curse? What if when it breaks, I'm invisible again? Cyprian turned to face her fully, his white eyes finding hers with that eerie precision. Is that what you think? That I treasure you because you're useful? I don't know what to think. He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of grey in his dark hair and the exact pattern of scars around his eyes. Arya, I've ruled a kingdom blind for 15 years. I've had advisors, warriors, servants, all of them useful. But I don't look at them the way I look at you. You can't look at them at all, she said, trying for humor but hearing how her voice shook. Exactly. His hand lifted to her face, fingers ghosting over her cheek. When I look at you, I see kindness in every expression. I see someone who notices beauty in moonflowers. I see someone who describes the world like it's precious. His thumb brushed her jaw. That's not the curse. That's you. Arya's walls crumbled. She was falling, had been falling since he first gasped color, and she was terrified and exhilarated all at once. I'm falling in love with you, she whispered. And I don't know if I'm allowed to. You're allowed anything you want. His voice was rough. And if you want me, Arya, I'm yours. The next morning, Garrett found them training in the courtyard, or trying to. Cyprian kept missing blocks, his attention clearly elsewhere. Your Majesty, you're distracted. I'm focused, Cyprian said, though his blind eyes kept drifting toward where Arya sat watching. You just tried to block an attack from the wrong direction. Did I? Garrett lowered his practice sword with a sigh. She's made you soft. Cyprian grinned, actually grinned. She's made me able to see, Garrett. I'll take soft. The revelation came from the oldest book in the Lumina library, so ancient that the pages threatened to crumble at a touch. Hecate, the head seer, had been researching for days, muttering to herself in languages Arya didn't recognize. Now she stood before Arya with eyes that had seen centuries, her weathered hands trembling as she held the book. "I need to see your palm," Hecate said. Arya extended her hand. The seer traced the lines there, then gasped. "Moon's mercy. I was right." Hecate looked up, and there were tears on her ancient face. "Child, do you know what you are?" "Wolfless," Arya said automatically. "Broken." "No," Hecate's voice was fierce. "You are the rarest of gifts. Your ancestors walked between worlds, healing what dark magic broke. They were called Cursebreakers, humans blessed by the moon goddess herself." The study went silent. Cyprian, who'd been pacing near the window, froze. "That's impossible," Arya whispered. "I'm nobody. I can't even shift." "You don't shift because you are something older, something purer." Hecate guided Arya to a chair, her touch gentle. "The Cursebreakers were hunted to extinction 3 centuries ago. Powerful wolves feared them, feared humans who could undo their magic and see through their deceptions. Your bloodline was supposed to be dead." Arya's mind reeled. "But I don't have any power. I can't do anything." "You're immune to dark magic. It slides off you like water off stone." Hecate turned to Cyprian. "The curse clings to your wolf sight, your majesty. It deceives the predator's eyes, making them see only darkness. But she has no wolf for it to deceive. When you look at her, you see with your human soul. True sight. That's why I can see her," Cyprian breathed. "More than that," Hecate's expression turned grave. "She doesn't just resist curses. She breaks them, absorbs them, and neutralizes dark magic like light burns away shadow." Arya's hands shook. For 23 years, she had been called defective, broken, and worthless. And all along, she'd been something rare and powerful. "Why did everyone treat me like I was nothing?" "Because they didn't understand," Hecate squeezed her shoulder. "It's easier to call something broken than to admit you don't understand it." "Can she break my curse?" Cyprian's voice was careful, as if he were afraid to hope. "I believe so, but it will require—" The door burst open as Seer strode in. "Hanno is descended from an ancient bloodline of Cursebreakers," Hecate explained. "She's the key to freeing your brother." Seer blinked. "So, you're telling me my brother fell for the one person in the realm who could save him? How convenient." Despite the confusion and the complete reshaping of her identity, Arya laughed. Cyprian's expression softened. "There it is. That's the sound I've been waiting for." He crossed to her, his hand finding hers with unerring accuracy. "You were never broken, Arya. You were exactly what you were meant to be. My curse breaker." Hecate cleared her throat. "There's more. The breaking of the curse, it won't be simple. It will require a sacrifice." Arya's heart stuttered. Old magic always demands a price. Always. They came at dawn when the mist still clung to the citadel walls. Arya was in the gardens with Cyprian when the horn sounded, 3 sharp blasts that sent birds scattering into the pale sky. "Armed company at the gates," Cyprian said, his blind eyes going hard. Garrett appeared within moments, his face grim. "A contingent of 30 warriors under the banner of the Obsidian Fang Pack. They are demanding an audience." "Isolde's father," Cyprian's jaw tightened. The name sent ice through Arya's veins. "Stay close to me," Cyprian said as they entered the throne room. Isolde swept through the doors, beautiful in the way a blade was beautiful, all sharp edges and cold perfection. "Cyprian," her voice was honey over steel. "Still sitting in the dark, I see. What do I owe this pleasure?" Cyprian's tone gave nothing away. "I heard a rumor. Isolde's eyes found Arya, and her smile turned cruel. That the blind king found his little healer. Did my father's little tribute actually think she could break my curse? So, you admit it? Sia stepped forward, hand on her sword. Of course. I paid good gold for that spell. Isolde's laugh was cutting. When Cyprian chose his precious honor over our marriage, I decided to teach him a lesson about power. Why are you here, Isolde? To protect my investment. Her eyes locked on Arya. Did he mention that when the curse breaks, the magic backlash will kill whoever breaks it? Arya's blood turned to ice. Cyprian's face had gone white. You knew, Arya whispered. I've been researching, looking for another way, Cyprian's voice cracked. I would rather stay blind forever than lose you. The truth hit her like a physical blow. He loved her truly. He was willing to stay cursed to keep her safe. How touching, Isolde sneered. I'm giving you a choice, Cyprian. Hand her over and I'll make her death quick. Or refuse, and I'll kill her slowly while you listen. Warriors moved into position. Garrett cleared his throat. So, are we fighting now or is there more dramatic revelation time? I pulled something yesterday and I'm not as young as I used to be. Cyprian stood, and his alpha power rolled through the throne room like thunder. You will not touch her. You'll have to kill me first. The second delegation arrived before the tension could break. A voice Arya knew too well bellowed through the halls, I'm here for what belongs to Whispering Woods. Alpha Victor swaggered into the throne room with Beatrix at his side. His eyes found Arya and he smiled that same cruel smile. Time to come home, girl. She's not going anywhere with you, Cyprian said quietly. She belongs to Whispering Woods, Victor countered. But now I'm hearing she's the key to breaking your curse. She's pack property, wolfless, worthless except as a tool. And we are taking our tool back. Arya felt sick. The moment she became valuable, Victor wanted to own her again. She belongs to no one but herself, Cyprian stood, his alpha power flooding the room. And if you take one step toward her, I'll kill you where you stand. Victor laughed. You're blind, King. How exactly will you? Cyprian shifted partially, his canines lengthening and his eyes blazing gold beneath the white blindness. I don't need to see you to destroy you. The challenge was issued in the courtyard at noon. Arya watched Cyprian face down an alpha who could see every move coming while he saw nothing but darkness. Victor attacked first, fast and brutal. But Cyprian moved like water, dodging by scent and sound alone. He caught Victor's arm mid-strike and sent him sprawling. I fought blind for 15 years. Do you really think you're the first to underestimate me? The fight was savage. Victor fought without honor, landing blows that made Arya flinch. But Cyprian fought with the fury of a king protecting what was his, not as property, but as a person with the right to choose. When Cyprian finally pinned Victor to the ground, he growled, she's not going back to a pack that treated her like garbage. If you ever come near her again, I will end you. Later, as healers stitched his cuts, Cyprian looked at Arya. She was crying silent tears. Worth it, he said softly. All of it. Arya knew then she would do anything to save him, even if it killed her. Arya made her choice in the darkness before dawn. She found Isolde's camp and made a deal. Leave Cyprian alone. Leave Lumina alone. I'll break the curse myself. The backlash will tear you apart, Isolde laughed. Maybe, Arya lifted her chin. I'd rather die trying than let you control either of us anymore. Arya walked back to the citadel. She entered the throne room and told Cyprian, I'm breaking the curse today. And you're not going to stop me. She took his scarred face in her hands. I see you, Cyprian. I see your heart. You've ruled with more honor than most kings manage with perfect sight. She pressed her palms over his blind eyes and reached for the curse. The magic resisted, but Arya's soul blazed with purpose. The magic flooded into her like fire, she screamed, but she didn't let go. She absorbed it and neutralized it until the curse shattered like glass. Cyprian gasped. I can see everything. His eyes were hazel, bright, and clear. He looked at the sunlight, then he really looked at Arya. You're alive. You broke it. Told you, she managed, swaying. Curse breaker. I was designed for this. Cyprian pulled her into a kiss that tasted like triumph. I can see you, and you're still the most beautiful thing in this world. Outside, Isolde's magic backlash obliterated her power, leaving her a bitter, ordinary woman. Victor was banished that afternoon. The best moment came 3 days later when Leo arrived, wide-eyed. Arya pulled him into her arms. You're staying here, Leo, with me forever. The mating ceremony was held under the full moon. Seer bound their hands with silver cord. I declare you mates, King and Queen of Lamina. At the feast, Arya wore silver and moonstone, her hair woven with star jasmine. Seer raised her cup, to my brother, who regained his sight and immediately used it to make hard eyes at his mate. Garrett grinned. To our queen, who broke an ancient curse and is somehow still putting up with us. Arya laughed, the sound bright and free. I went from invisible to unforgettable in 3 weeks. Cyprian pulled her close, his beautiful seeing eyes locked on her face. Get used to being seen, my queen. The first month of peace in Lamina Citadel was a dream Arya never dared to have while scrubbing the floors of Whispering Woods. Every morning, she woke not to the bite of cold stone, but to the warmth of the sun and the presence of Cyprian, whose hazel eyes never seemed tired of looking at her. However, being a curse breaker was not a title one could simply set aside once the crown was placed. While Cyprian could now see the physical world, the silver roses, the snapped banners, and the faces of his people, Arya saw the invisible. Her true sight had intensified. She saw the lingering threads of the broken curse drifting through the hallways like spiderwebs of oily smoke. You're staring at the corner again, Cyprian's voice rumbled. He walked toward her, his movements no longer hesitant but full of the predatory grace of an alpha king. I can see the remnants, Cyprian, Arya whispered. Isolde's magic didn't just vanish. It shattered. And shards of it are still floating in the air. Cyprian pulled her close, his scent of cedar and rain grounding her. The seers said you neutralized it. Do you feel it hurting you? No, Arya replied, looking out over the balcony. But I feel it, waiting. Below in the courtyard, Leo was training with Garrett. The 12-year-old was no longer the skin and bone boy Arya had protected. He was filling out, his dark hair wild as he dodged Garrett's practice sword. But as Arya watched, her vision flickered. In the center of Leo's chest, a spark of silver light, identical to her own power, pulsed in rhythm with his golden wolf eyes. The blood of the curse breakers was waking up in him, too. The peace was officially shattered when a messenger from the northern Frostlands arrived, collapsing at the citadel gates. He didn't have a single wound on his body, but his eyes were the color of stagnant ash, the same sightless white that had once plagued Cyprian. He's not cursed, Hecate whispered as she examined the fallen warrior in the infirmary. He's hollow. Arya stepped forward, her hand hovering over the man's chest. Her true sight recoiled. It wasn't that his sight was gone, it was as if his wolf had been erased. The internal spirit that gave a shift to their strength, their scent, and their soul had been vacuumed out, leaving only a human shell that didn't know how to function. They are calling it the Silver Silence, Seer said, her expression grim as she entered the room. Reports are coming from the border. Entire villages of wolves are losing their ability to shift. Not like you, Arya, you were born without a wolf. But these people, their wolves are being stolen. Isolde? Cyprian asked, his hand tightening on the hilt of his sword. Isolde is a powerless mortal in the dungeons, Sia reminded him. But the magic she unleashed, it opened a door to the void. And now the void is hungry. The Council of Alphas convened that evening, and the atmosphere was toxic. Alpha Silas of the Northlands stood, his voice like grinding stones. We are losing our nature. And it began the moment the curse breaker touched our king. Some say she isn't breaking curses, she is absorbing our power for herself. Cyprian stood, his alpha aura flooding the room like a physical weight that forced the other alphas to their knees. My queen gave her life to break a darkness that would have consumed this entire realm. If you suggest she is the cause of this silence again, Silas, I will show you exactly how much power I have regained. But Arya saw the truth. She looked at Silas and saw a smudge of black smoke clinging to his throat. The void was already here. We have to go to the border, Arya told Cyprian that night in their private chambers. Hecate says the imbalance was caused when I absorbed the curse magic. I didn't just neutralize it, I became a lightning rod for it. The void is seeking the source. I am not letting you walk into a wasteland that eats souls, Arya, Cyprian said, his voice raw with a fear he never showed the council. I am the only one who can see it coming, she countered. And Leo, he has the spark. He needs to learn to use it before it consumes him too. Reluctantly, Cyprian agreed. They left at dawn, the king, the queen, the young protégé, and Garrett, who complained loudly about the cold while checking his weapons with lethal efficiency. By the third day of travel, the vibrant world began to fade. The trees turned grey, and the birds stopped singing. The air felt heavy, as if it were trying to drown them. I don't like this, sister, Leo whispered, his hand gripping the hilt of a small silver dagger Cyprian had given him. The ground, it feels like it's breathing. Arya looked down. Through her true sight, the earth was no longer solid. It was a mesh of black veins, pulsing with a rhythmic, mechanical hunger. They reached the first border village, and the sight was horrific. Dozens of wolves sat in the snow, staring at nothing. They didn't eat, they didn't speak, they simply existed in a state of permanent, hollow silence. Arya, look, Cyprian pointed to the center of the village. A rift sat in the air, jagged and dark, like a tear in a piece of silk. It was leaking the same oily smoke Arya had seen in the citadel. From the rift, a figure stepped out. She wore the face of Isolde, but her skin was translucent, and her eyes were twin pits of endless night. The sacrifice wasn't enough, the entity hissed, its voice echoing from the void. A life for a life, remember? You broke the binding, little healer. Now, I will bind the world in your place. The entity lunged, not with a blade, but with a wave of absolute cold. Garrett shifted into his massive grey wolf form, but the moment the black smoke touched his fur, he whimpered and fell, his gold eyes turning grey. Garrett! Sia screamed, rushing to his side. Cyprian drew his sword, the moonstone in the hilt glowing with a fierce light. He moved with the precision he had learned in 15 years of darkness, but the entity was like fighting smoke. Every strike passed through it. You cannot kill nothingness, King, the entity mocked. Arya realized then that this wasn't a curse to be broken, it was a debt to be paid. She stepped forward, her hands glowing with a blinding silver light. Leo, now. The boy didn't hesitate. He grabbed Arya's other hand, and the silver light between them formed a bridge. Arya reached out and grabbed Cyprian's arm. The circuit was complete, the Wolf King, the Curse Breaker, and the bridge. Hecate told me the secret, Arya shouted over the rising wind of the void. A Curse Breaker doesn't have to carry the fire alone. We share the soul. She began to draw the black smoke into herself, but instead of letting it tear her apart as it had during the first breaking, she channeled it through the bond. She passed the energy to Cyprian, whose alpha strength could handle the weight, and then to Leo, whose dual nature acted as a filter. The entity screamed as the black veins in the earth began to glow silver. The hollow wolves in the village gasped, the grey in their eyes receding as their souls were tethered back to their bodies. Together. Cyprian roared, his hazel eyes flashing with a combination of his own gold and Arya's silver. With a final surge of power, Arya slammed her palms against the rift. The silver light cauterized the wound in reality. The entity vanished with a final, echoing shriek, and the oily smoke was incinerated by the pure radiance of their joined souls. Silence returned to the Frostlands, but this time, it was the peaceful silence of falling snow. They returned to Lumina not as a king and his useful healer, but as a triad of power that the world had never seen before. Garrett recovered, though he insisted his wolf now had 8 silver highlights and deserved a raise in pay. The Council of Alphas never questioned Arya's right to rule again. They had seen her stand at the edge of the world and pull the sun back from the void. One evening, Arya and Cyprian stood in the Moonstone Gardens once more. The star jasmine was in full bloom, and the air was sweet. "I can see the threads again," Arya whispered, leaning her head against Cyprian's shoulder. "But they aren't black anymore. They are silver. They are us." Cyprian turned her to face him, his eyes drinking in every detail of her face just as he had on the day the color first returned. "I ruled in darkness for 15 years, Arya. I thought I knew what strength was. I was wrong." He kissed her, a promise kept in the light and the dark alike. "You were never invisible, my queen. You were just waiting for a world big enough to see you." The victory over the rift had restored the souls of the northern wolves, but it had left Arya changed. Her true sight was no longer a flicker she could control, it was a constant, shimmering overlay of the world. She saw the life force of every guard, the golden threads of the pact bond between Sia and her warriors, and the pulsing silver light that now lived permanently in Cyprian's heart. "You're doing it again," Cyprian whispered, his hand finding the small of her back as they stood in the council chambers. He could see her eyes, no longer just dark brown, but flecked with starlight, focusing on things that weren't there. "I can see the weight of their souls, Cyprian," she murmured. "It's beautiful, but it's heavy." Their quiet moment was broken by Hecate, who entered the room with a heavy iron casket. "We found this in the ruins of the northern village. It was buried beneath the rift." As Hecate opened the lid, the air in the room turned cold. Inside lay a single, scorched contract, signed in blood that refused to fade. Arya leaned in, her true sight screaming a warning. The signature at the bottom wasn't Isolde's. It was a name that had been scrubbed from the history books of the wolf kind, Malika. "Isolde didn't just hire a dark practitioner," Hecate said, her voice trembling. "She made a pact with the Architect of Shadows, the man who originally hunted the curse breakers to extinction 3 centuries ago." "How is that possible?" Sia asked, stepping forward. "No human or wolf lives that long." "Unless they aren't either anymore," Hecate replied. "Malika didn't just want to kill the curse breakers, he wanted to steal their ability to neutralize magic. He wanted to become the void himself. By breaking the curse, Arya, you didn't just save Cyprian, you rang a bell that Malika has been waiting to hear for 300 years." Arya felt a chill that had nothing to do with the winter air. She wasn't just a rarest of gifts, she was the final piece of a puzzle an ancient monster had been trying to solve for centuries. To find Malika, they had to go back to the beginning. Hecate's research suggested that the Silver Hearth, the ancestral sanctuary where the first curse breakers were blessed, was hidden in a place of great pain and transition. "It's under the pack house," Arya said, the realization hitting her like a blow. "In the Whispering Woods. In the very stones I spent 23 years scrubbing." The journey back to her home pack was a grim affair. Cyprian refused to let her go with anything less than a full war party. Garrett, Sia, and even young Leo joined them. Leo had become inseparable from his sister, his dual nature as a wolf with a curse-breaker's spark making him the most sensitive member of the group. As they crossed the border into Whispering Woods territory, the memories flooded back to Arya. She remembered the mud Beatrix had tracked across her floors, the laughter of the warriors as they spilled her water, and the crushing weight of being invisible. But when they reached the clearing, the Whispering Woods pack was a ghost of its former self. Since Victor had been banished and his alliance stripped, the pack had crumbled. The stone walls were cracked, and the remaining wolves looked thin and defeated. Beatrix was there, standing in the entrance hall where Arya had once knelt in the dirt. She wasn't a Luna anymore, she was a broken woman, her silver fur matted and her ice-blue eyes hollow. "You," Beatrix hissed, looking at Arya. "The little mouse returns as a queen." "I didn't come for you, Beatrix," Arya said, her voice steady and devoid of the fear that had once defined her. "I came for what's beneath your feet." Arya knelt on the stones she knew so well. She didn't use a brush this time. She pressed her palms against the ancient, unforgiving granite and let her silver light pour into the cracks. The stones didn't scream, they hummed. A section of the floor, the part near the kitchens where Leo used to hide with bread, began to glow. The stone dissolved, revealing a staircase of pure moonlight leading into the depths of the earth. "Stay here," Cyprian commanded his warriors, but he kept Arya's hand firmly in his. Together with Leo, they descended into the silver hearth. The sanctuary below was a cathedral of light. It was filled with the history of her people, tapestries that didn't depict hunts or wars, but moments of healing. There were mirrors that didn't show faces, but the true state of a soul. In the center of the room sat a pool of liquid silver. "This is the source," a voice echoed. A man stepped from behind a pillar. He looked young, almost Arya's age, but his eyes were like the shifting surfaces of a black hole. He was dressed in robes that seemed to drink the light around them. "Malika," Cyprian growled, shifting partially, his hazel eyes flashing gold. "The king who sees," Malika smiled, and the expression was more terrifying than a growl. "And the queen who feels. You are exactly as the prophecy described. A life for a life. A sight for a sight." Malika didn't attack with claws. He raised a hand, and the liquid silver in the pool turned black. "I waited 300 years for a curse breaker to be born with a heart large enough to love a predator. That love is the bridge I need. To break a curse is easy. To become the source of all magic, that requires a sacrifice that only you can give, Arya." He gestured to Leo. Suddenly, the boy was lifted into the air by invisible threads of shadow. Leo struggled, his claws tearing at the air, but the void was too strong. "Let him go!" Arya screamed, her silver light erupting. "I will," Malika said. "In exchange for your soul. Become my anchor to this world, Arya. Give me your true sight, and I will let the boy live to become the greatest alpha this realm has ever seen." Cyprian lunged, his moonstone blade cutting through the air, but Malika simply stepped through a shadow and reappeared behind Arya. He leaned close, whispering into her ear. "He can see you now, Arya. But if you don't choose, he will watch your brother die." Arya looked at Cyprian. She saw the desperation in his eyes, the man who had fought blind for 15 years just to protect her right to exist. Then she looked at Leo, the brother who had saved her bread and believed she wasn't broken when the whole world told her she was. "I won't trade a life for a life," Arya said, her voice echoing with a power that shook the cathedral. "That is the law of the curse. But I am a curse breaker. I make the rules." She didn't move toward Malika. She moved toward the blackened pool. "Arya, no!" Cyprian shouted, realizing what she was doing. She plunged her hands into the liquid darkness. The void rushed into her, 1,000 times stronger than the curse she had broken in the throne room. She felt her mahogany hair turn white at the tips, she felt the skin of her palms begin to smoke. But she didn't stop. She reached through the darkness and found the silver light at the bottom, the original blessing of the moon goddess. She pulled it up, dragging the light into the darkness. Leo. Cyprian. The bond, she cried out. Cyprian grabbed her waist, his alpha strength anchoring her to the physical world. Leo, released from the shadows, fell into the pool beside her, his small hands finding hers. The three of them formed a triangle of light. Aria was the conduit, Cyprian was the earth, and Leo was the future. The black liquid began to boil, turning back into pure, radiant silver. Malika screamed as the light touched him. He wasn't just a man, he was a collection of stolen magic and hollow promises. Without the darkness to hide in, his 300-year-old body began to crumble into dust. You cannot possess the moon. He wheezed before vanishing into a cloud of grey ash. The silver hearth erupted in a final, blinding flash of light. When Aria opened her eyes, the pool was calm. The cathedral was silent. Leo was breathing heavily, his eyes now a permanent, startling mix of gold and silver. Cyprian held Aria as if she were the only solid thing in a world of ghosts. Are you all right? Aria looked at her hands. They were scarred, much like the skin around Cyprian's eyes. They were the marks of a price paid. I can't see the souls anymore, she whispered, her voice a mix of relief and sadness. The true sight, it's gone back into the hearth. Cyprian lifted her chin, his hazel eyes full of a wonder that had never faded. Then you'll just have to see the world the way I do. As a place that is finally, truly free. They emerged from the Whispering Woods not as survivors of a tragedy, but as the founders of a new dynasty. The silver silence was gone, the wolves of the realm feeling the return of their spirits as the hearth was purified. Aria returned to Lumina Citadel, but she didn't go back to the silk and the silence. She opened the archives to everyone. She invited the wolfless and the broken to the Citadel, turning it into a sanctuary for those the Pax had forgotten. Garrett finally got his raise, though he complained that being a silver-flecked bodyguard was far more work than being a regular commander. Sia found her own mate, a quiet scholar from the archives who didn't mind that she was the fiercest warrior in the kingdom. And Leo? The boy grew. He became the first alpha to lead not by fear, but by the same kindness Aria had shown him in the shadows of the kitchens. One evening, years later, Aria stood on the balcony overlooking the Moonstone Gardens. She no longer needed to describe the flowers to Cyprian. He stood beside her, his sight perfect, his hand in hers. Do you ever miss it? He asked. Being invisible? Aria laughed, the sound bright and free. Never. But I'm glad I was. It taught me that the things people don't notice are often the most powerful things in the world. Cyprian pulled her close, the stars reflecting in his hazel eyes. I noticed you, Aria. From the very first breath. I know, she whispered. And you haven't looked away since. The shadows of the past were gone, replaced by a light that didn't require a curse to be seen. It was the light of a world mended, a kingdom loved, and a girl who was no longer just a sacrifice, but the very heart of the moon. The stones of Lumina Citadel, once cold and imposing, began to hum with a different kind of life. Aria, no longer the invisible sacrifice, had traded her scrubbing brush for a quill, though her hands still bore the faint, silvery scars of the final battle. She sat in the High Council chamber, looking out over a courtyard filled with activity. They are arriving from the Ironwood borders, Sia reported, leaning against the stone map table. 3 wolfless humans and 2 omegas who were cast out of their packs for being too weak to shift under pressure. Arya nodded. The sanctuary she had founded wasn't just a political statement, it was a necessity. In the wake of Malekith's defeat, the magical ecosystem of the realm was shifting. Wolves were finding that their strength was no longer tied purely to aggression, and humans were discovering that the blood of the curse breakers had left traces in the very earth they walked upon. The traditionalists are calling it the Kingdom of the Broken, Cyprian said as he entered. He was a vision of elegant power, a tall, athletic alpha king with defined muscles but a sophisticated frame, his long dark hair flowing over a perfectly tailored black tunic embroidered with silver. He walked to Arya, his hazel eyes, now clear and full of sight, locking onto her with an intensity that never wavered. "Let them call it what they wish," Arya replied, standing to meet him. She was young, beautiful, and resilient, her mahogany hair tied back with a simple silver ribbon. "I was broken for 23 years, and it was in that brokenness that I found the power to save their sight." Cyprian pulled her close, his presence a dangerous yet comforting heat. "They fear you, Arya. Not because you are weak, but because you have proven that the hierarchy they built their lives upon is a lie." While the citadel prospered, the northern Frostlands remained a place of mystery. Though the void was gone, the silver silence had left a vacuum. Reports reached the citadel of a new movement, wolves who chose to remain in their human forms, inspired by the queen who had mended the world without ever growing claws. "It's a cultural crisis," Garrett remarked one evening, nursing a cup of wine by the hearth. "The younger generation thinks being a wolf is old-fashioned. If they stop shifting, the pack bonds will weaken. Or perhaps they will change," Arya suggested. Leo, now 13 and taller than his sister, looked up from his training manual. His eyes were a startling gold-silver hybrid, a sign of his unique dual heritage. "I don't feel weaker when I'm human. I feel more precise. When I'm a wolf, the hunger takes over. But when I use the silver light, I can think." Cyprian watched his protégé with a mixture of pride and caution. "Precision is a weapon, Leo. But remember, the wolf is your instinct. It is the part of you that knows when a lie is being told by the rhythm of a heartbeat." The peace was tested when Alpha Victor's former beta, Gage, sent a desperate plea for help. The remnants of the Shadowpine Pack, now rebranded as the Whispering Woods, were being hunted by rogue warriors who saw their lack of a strong alpha as an invitation for slaughter. "I have to go," Arya said. "We go together," Cyprian corrected, his voice leaving no room for argument. "The Queen returns to the woods not as a servant, but as the sovereign." The journey to the Whispering Woods was a stark contrast to Arya's first departure in the tribute wagon. This time, she rode a white mare, flanked by the king's elite guard. When they reached the clearing where the selection ceremony had once taken place, the remaining members of her old pack fell to their knees. Beatrix was there, no longer the proud Silver Luna but a woman stripped of her status. She looked at Arya with a complex mixture of envy and awe. "I used to track mud on your floors," Beatrix whispered as Arya dismounted. "And now you live in the mud you created," Arya replied, not with cruelty, but with the flat honesty of a ruler. "I am not here for vengeance, Beatrix. I am here for the children who are wolfless, as I was. They will come to Lumina. They will be educated. They will be protected." Victor's banishment had left a hole that darkness was trying to fill. Rogue wolves from the Obsidian Fang borders had begun to encroach. That night, the rogue party attacked. Cyprian moved like a streak of lightning. He didn't shift immediately, he fought with his blade, a tall and muscular silhouette against the moonlight, his sharp facial features focused with lethal intent. He was the definition of elegant danger, his long hair whipping in the wind as he defended the perimeter. When the rogue leader, a massive, bulky beast, lunged at Arya, she didn't flinch. She no longer had her true sight, but she had her heart. She raised her hand, and the silvery scars on her palms glowed. A pulse of pure, neutralizing energy erupted, not killing the wolf, but forcing him back into his human form, vulnerable and shocked. "The age of monsters is over," Arya declared to the stunned rogues. "If you wish to live, you will learn to walk as men." Upon their return to Lumina, the first anniversary of the curse-breaking arrived. The citadel prepared for the rite of the silver moon, a celebration not of dominance, but of unity. Leo stood at the center of the great hall. It was his time to undergo the formal transition. As he stood before the king and queen, the silver light in the hall seemed to coalesce around him. He shifted, not into a standard wolf, but into a creature of pure, luminescent white fur, his eyes glowing with the wisdom of a curse-breaker. He was the first of his kind. A guardian wolf. "The world is changing," Sia whispered to Garrett as they watched the boy. "As long as there's still wine and someone to laugh at my jokes, I'm fine with it," Garrett replied, though his eyes were wet. Arya looked at Cyprian. They stood on the balcony, the same place where they had once shared a meal in silence while he was still blind. "I used to wonder if I was real," Arya said, leaning her head on his shoulder. Cyprian turned her to face him, his hazel eyes drinking in her beauty. He was the athletic, strong king she had saved, and she was the resilient queen who had given him the world. "You are the most real thing I have ever known, Arya. You are the color in my darkness." The shadows of the past were truly gone. In their place was a legacy of light, a kingdom where being broken was simply the first step toward becoming whole.